Hi, my name is Brian Venton. I'm from Townsville in North Queensland. I want to pull back the curtain of our collective circumstance and make an appeal today to discerning voters looking for a new political home. There are many voters who could be referred to as silent observers. They sit in the background shadows, not disengaged by any means, but quietly observing what is happening around them. And I've done this video with you folks in mind. I'm of the view that voters are a discerning bunch. They're thinkers, they're thoughtful, and have a keen sense of appropriateness and truth, hypocrisy and injustice. And I suggest that if there is anything that these last couple of years have taught us, it has forced us to consider what kind of a country do we want to live in. Now let me answer that question by asking a whole lot of other questions. What are we prepared to accept as normative and ethical behaviour of government? Is it morally right for governments to use business to enforce health orders? Is it acceptable for governments to monitor our movements and harvest data via a QR code or a PCR test or through some kind of digital ID? Is it right for government in a democratic society to use fear and coercion to control people in the name of keeping everyone safe? What does it mean to give proper and informed consent? Why is it so hard to get a medical exemption? What does following the science mean when government refuses to provide the scientific basis for its decision making and or ignores science that contradicts their view? What is the meaning of reasonable risk? And what powers should the Chief Health Officer have in determining what is reasonable risk? There's just so many unanswered questions. Then from a social perspective, I don't know about you, but it broke my heart to see people emotionally being manipulated in order to comply and conform to a medical procedure, to then proffer all manner of altruistic sentiments to somehow make sense or justify or legitimise their own actions. That people should be forced into compromising their own moral integrity just to keep a job, in my view, is reprehensible behaviour from any government, state or federal. We are left wondering what on earth the leaders of our nations are on about. Why do they keep ignoring what seems so obvious to the population at large? And then we also have to look to the future. It's not just about what we've all been through over the last 2 years, but it's about tomorrow as well. And I don't know about you, but I found the mixed messaging of our Prime Minister incredibly confusing. The National Cabinet seemed to be little more than a tool used to subjugate citizens. I could never understand the PM's reticence to intervene when state leaders imposed the severest control measures on citizens. And when the nation was crying out for intervention, our leaders gave no relief. I could never understand why so many politicians were unwilling to challenge the prevailing narratives, apart from just a few. This incredulous behaviour of our politicians on all sides is now starting to make sense as the bigger agenda is being revealed. I've got a video clip here that I invite you to watch. An interview of our Prime Minister by the World Health Economic Forum. I want you to listen to the interviewer's questions and watch the body language and the response of our Prime Minister. Have a listen.
Years, you know that the World Economic Forum also has had the privilege of working with your government on a number of cases and is looking forward to continue engaging Australia on relevant multi-stakeholder initiatives on trade, investments, the digital transformation that I know you are very much focused on, and the fourth industrial revolution. We also look forward to strengthen our collaboration on topics like energy transition. I know it's important for you, climate change action.
Now, as leaders, we're walking a tightrope, trying to get that balance and those settings right. Some of those settings are about clearing the way for business, getting out of the way. And in Australia, that has meant driving world-leading reforms in open banking, e-invoicing, digital identity, which means, frankly, people get paid more quickly, boosting cash flows, particularly in the small and medium enterprise sector, and unlocking the transformational opportunity of critical technologies. Unmask trolls who defame others by making platforms responsible for what is published on their platforms, strengthening online privacy protections, working with the social media companies to make sure they combat misinformation and disinformation on their platforms. And of course, ensuring they take action in relation to terrorist-related content. There's malicious cyber threats and attacks that are taking place. Disinformation, economic coercion. This is a highly contested space where we're seeing much grey zone tactics being employed throughout the region intended to seek to coerce and intimidate. Achieving net zero is now about the how, not the if, not the when or the why. It's about the how.
The point I want to make, and this should be a moment of revelation and insight for each one of us, that this is the first overt public declaration of Scott Morrison's commitment to the World Economic Forum. He nails his allegiances front and centre to the masthead of the World Economic Forum. Now, if you know anything about the WEC, what their platform stands for, then that association, I suggest, is majorly problematic for us as a nation. It explains everything concerning our federal government and our state government's behaviours over the past couple of years. Now, my question is, if yours and my concerns are legitimate, if our questions are in any way warranted, does it provide sufficient evidence and motivation for our voting behaviour to change in 2022? The conversation around the traps is suggesting that there will be a substantial shift of voter preference is about to happen in this election. Now, I and a friend recently completed an analysis of all Queenslander electorates to ascertain how many votes would need to shift from majors to minors to affect change in Canberra. Statistically, we discovered in Queensland that a 30% primary vote shift from majors to minors would change a heck of a lot of seats. Our findings can be found on the Facebook page of the One Voice campaign that's on the screen there. But a couple of quick summary stats. There were 434,482 Queensland voters who voted for minor party candidates in 2019. Now let me put this to you. If one of these voters invited another voter to join them in voting for a minor candidate, that is, a 1+1 strategy, then 10 seats in Queensland would fall immediately to minor candidates. That alone would change the balance of power in Canberra. Those seats include Blair, Capricornia, Dawson, Flynn, Groom, Herbert, Leichhardt, Longman, Wide Bay and Wright. Then another 10 seats would change if it was a 1+2 strategy of recruitment. That would be 22 of the 30 seats in Queensland would forever change the balance of power in Canberra. It would also potentially install at least 3 new senators to the Senate in 22 out of Queensland alone. Now, my belief is that there is a body of voters, perhaps the silent observers who might be listening to this video today, who have traditionally voted for the LNP, the ALP and the Greens, who deeply feel they have been let down by the actions of both state and federal legislators. They equally sense that our future is at the mercy of international players, and that needs to change. How invested are we for change? How deep is our hurt? Are we sufficiently concerned about the future of our country that we would change our traditional voting behaviour? Now, the message that I and many others are driving over this period, where we vote all majors last, is not a comfortable message to hear if you have an historical voting brand relationship with your major, and I acknowledge that. But if you're thinking of making a shift in voting behaviour, then there is an incredible group of minor party candidates who are well worth backing in. They provide a place where if you want to be a part of the 1+1 or the 1+2 cohort of change makers, then you can find a place to rest your feet under their table. Now let me say something briefly to those who are already nestled around the campfire of a minor party. I would encourage you to make these voters, the silent observers, feel very welcome. We need to invite them to join us. Change is never easy, but in my view and the view of many others, we are facing a national crisis, and we cannot sit by and wishfully think that things are going to be okay. They are not. So I encourage you, be decisive in this election period. Vote for a minor. Preference all minors before you vote for a major, and vote the majors last. I trust you have enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I invite you to come join us around the campfire and vote for a minor party candidate in this election 22. Thank you for listening, and remember, be the change that you want to see happen. Thank you.